Alrighty guys, so the topic for today, or the topic that I want to attempt to tackle today, is going to be the social worker talk. A lot of people have asked me to talk about this subject. I get this question more than any other question ever. I've seen it on both YouTube channels. I get it on Reddit. I get this question everywhere. I've attempted to make this video a few times. The problem is, it's not that it's such a complicated problem. It's that it's a big problem, or it's a vast topic. Let's put it that way. The topic is very vast. There's a lot of ways that you can go with this, and I can't put it in one video. I can't maintain in my tiny little brain intelligent thoughts enough to cover all the different aspects of this topic that I would like to. I'll take it in like little bits, and hopefully each video that I talk about with this topic, the stories I tell are related to each other. Sometimes I go on tangents, but like I just did. So anyway, the thing I want to talk about today, and the reason that this comes about is I get this question a variety of ways, or people make statements like, the statement is police officers should be replaced with social workers in like XYZ circumstances. Or I'll get the question, why are police officers so reluctant or so dead set against having social workers respond on these kind of things? Well, when you think about the pushback that you're getting from police officers, you have to think about where this topic began. Because where this topic is today is not where it began, and people are not being honest about the question and the response. When this all started, this was in 2020, the summer of love, when every major city across the country was burning, and Antifa and Black Lives Matter groups were out there just wreaking havoc on our society, and they were basically making up all these police reform ideas. They were just pulling them straight out of their ass. And then you'd have a bunch of dopey ass politicians who were following along with these ideas. And when you had that, those are two combinations of things that police officers are going to stand up vehemently and oppose. So when this all began, the question wasn't, oh, we should divert some funding from police departments and put it into social services. No. And I just saw a headline today that she a congressperson, Cory Booker, that weirdo lady, I don't know if she's out of Minnesota, I don't know where she's out of. She's standing behind her defund and abolish the police stance. So what these people were saying is, we need to defund and abolish the police and replace them with social service workers, and that got turned into social workers and stuff like that. Well, that's a stupid idea, because there's a lot of stuff in our society that needs to be handled by police. Now, what that has kind of morphed into is this stuff saying, well, police aren't properly trained to deal with people with mental illness, so we need to put people who have better training, that are better suited to do this job, in that position. We need to take money away from police departments to do that. Well, the problem is, you're still taking money away from police departments, and the police department's budget was not set with the idea that police officers are social workers. That's not the reason the budget was designed. So if you want to create these other programs, you have to create them out of different funds. That's my first point. My second point is that there's a lot of times, well, these 2 points actually go together. I'll say them and then we'll talk about it. The first one is that there are a lot of runs that police officers go on that is not dispatched as a mental health run at all. These are runs that involve criminal damaging, threats, menacing, fights, people throwing things, just common disturbances, things like that, where people are throwing things around, and I don't know, you get the point. Things that people who are suffering from mental illness might do. People will call in about their activities and not about their state of mind. And that will make a police officer respond no matter what program you have. If there's a call about a fight, or my brother is punching my mom, a police officer is always going to be the person that responds to that run, bar none. So if you take money away from the police departments to fund more social programs, You're taking money away from the officers who are going to have to respond to these runs that turns out they're actually mental health calls. The other part of that is that people have this idea that social workers are going to show up and it's just going to be like, like, I'm a social worker, everybody's going to be good now, and there's not going to be any fighting, there's not going to be any hostility and all that. That's an absolutely insane way to think about things. People who believe that don't have the first clue about what a social worker does, or even a clinician, or even a freaking, what do you call someone with a PhD in this? Are they a doctor? I think they're doctors. Sorry, I'm an idiot. This is what happens when you're thinking about what you're going to try to say next while your mouth is still moving. But yeah, even doctors that have PhDs in this stuff and have been practicing this kind of medicine for decades, they don't just show up and magically things go up. I can tell you that from watching in hospitals, when the doctors come by and they see somebody acting like this, they get a bunch of people to hold that person down and then they put them to sleep. That is how they de-escalate these situations. So the way I want to kind of segue and talk about these two topics and kind of tie them together is specifically by talking about the times that I, as a police officer, have had to respond to a mental health facility of one sort or another and deal with a behavior problem that the trained people at that facility aren't equipped to handle. And I'm not trying to dog them. I actually had one today where we had a very good relationship with the people running this facility. They were very nice. By the time we left, they were singing our praises. They absolutely adored my partner and I. But regardless, I'll get into the beginning of the story instead of telling you the end first. So we see a run on the board. And we're parked next to each other doing the little Cruiser 69 that police officers do. And we see this run pop up. We say, hey, it's getting towards the end of the shift. We got about an hour left. Let's take that run now before we get sent and it's the end of the shift. So we go down to this house and it was a group home. The person in the group home was calling in about a resident, saying that this resident was upset about God knows what, and they were destroying things in the house, throwing their property around, whatever. So we get there. The person that works in the house comes to the door. She was really nice. She opens the door and says, yeah, he's over here, gives us his name. We go back to his room, and all of his clothes and everything, his dresser, the artwork that was on his walls was all thrown out in the hallway. And we're like, we asked if she had a key to the door, and she was like, no, the door's unlocked. So we knocked lightly, called out his name, and tried to open the door, which he had kind of stacked some stuff up in front of the door because he was angry. And he says, yeah, I'm in here, and he was willing to talk to us. So we kind of pushed open his door and started talking to him. This guy was probably 35 to 40 years old, living in a group home with a variety of mental health problems. He cognitively, is that the proper way to talk about it, or his mental maturity did not match his age. It was of someone that was younger than a teenager, and he was upset about something that he perceived the people running this home had done to him. So he decided to destroy his room. We went in there, we talked to him for a little bit. I went and got a broom. He had broken some glass. I had him sweep up the glass. I mean, it's funny, we're like parents in this scenario. So we helped him put his dresser back together. He starts picking up his clothes, putting his clothes back into his dresser. And when I was helping him with that, my partner went back and talked to the people at the group home. They came to an agreement that if he was no longer acting out, then he could stay there, and they felt that it would be safe. So we got him to that point, and he's, still wasn't happy, but it is what it is. This is his day-to-day. This is something that he struggles with, and the place he was is the place where he needed to be. There's no other place for us to take him, and this wasn't a criminal matter. We're not going to arrest him in this kind of situation. We literally were just there to help kind of redirect him. And sometimes if these people and this is no different with people with mental illness or people without mental illness. They get dialed in on somebody that they decide is the enemy, and sometimes bringing in an outside source, and police officers are often that outside source, it gets them to, instead of focusing on that, they like snap and they focus on us, and we can kind of change the tempo of the conversation and bring them back to a normal spot. You know, like you can see it, you can see their body just go, and then they relax. And we went and we talked to the staff, and there was one person that she kept calling herself doctor, so she was some form of doctor, and then the other person was a staff person that worked there. We talked to them about the techniques that we use, and about how if he's completely focused in on one of them, then maybe the other one can come in with a slightly different tactic and begin to talk to him. And we weren't telling them anything new, but they agreed with everything we had to say. They thought that we handled everything in a very professional manner, and they were very grateful that we were there. The whole point of that conversation is that just because they have this like education and they are who they are, doesn't mean that they're magically going to make things better, and that the presence of the police officers did not instantly make it worse. There's somebody walking his dog by, so it's going to get awkward. Now, the second story that I want to tell you about, this one's a couple of years old. This night, I work a district car, and there was a run on my district, and I didn't realize at the time it was a group home, but it was. And this guy called in. He had a very peculiar name. I'll never forget his name, which I'm not going to say now. Called in and said that he needed a ride to treatment because he was hallucinating. So we used to get calls like that a lot. Well, we still do. We get calls that they just want to ride to the place, because when they go to this place, people are nice to them and they get some food, and it makes them feel better. It's not always the most appropriate thing to do, so sometimes you have to get there, you have to kind of evaluate whether or not this person needs to go someplace or they just need someone to talk to. Often we can just show up, talk to them, literally get them a glass of ice water, tuck them in, and then lock the door on your way out. I've done that hundreds of times in my career. But this particular night, I walk in the house and I'm thinking this is going to be one of those cases where I just need to kind of talk to somebody, evaluate their position, confirm, or like make them understand that they don't need to go anywhere today, tuck them in, and I'm going to go. But I walk into this house, and this guy, he was a black guy in his 30s, but he looked much older. He was kind of short. He's probably about this tall, pretty round, and he was hallucinating that he thought demons were climbing through the walls. Like he could see them crawling through the walls, and then when they got through the wall, they would climb up the wall to the ceiling, and they would climb over him and then drop down and attack him. That's what he was seeing. So I walk in the house, and he's looking around, and he's doing this thing with his tongue. It's really, really awkward. He's going, you know, like making this sound, and he had his hands out like they were claws. And when I walked in the house, he ran and literally hid behind me. Like I've got this guy hanging on to my back, and he's like hiding behind me, and I'm like, dude, you need to get out from under me. Like, what the hell is going on here? He was so focused on what he was seeing that he couldn't talk to me. And after a minute or two, I think I got him to go up to his room to get his belongings, like his shoes and his wallet or something like that. And he was able to snap out of it for a moment, and he told me, he's like, hey, this is my disorder. He goes, I see things. He goes, I know they're not there, but I can see them. And I was a newer officer at the time, and I wasn't that experienced with this kind of thing. And I remember asking him, like, you know, well, if you know they're not there, why is it a problem? And he's like, because I'm seeing them. I mean, he was terrified. And then he told me exactly what he was seeing, and then he would like kind of jump to the side as one like fell from the ceiling trying to attack him. And I was like, all right, I believe you. Let's get in the car. I'll get you down there. So give him a quick pat down, open the front door. He goes running out the front door to my cruiser. He's there pulling on the door handle, trying to get in the back seat. Got him in the car, drove him down to where we take people with mental illness that are in crisis. This crisis center is what this is called. It's not the name of it, but it's what it is. And I opened the back door and he wouldn't get out. He wanted me to go open the door to the facility before he would get out of the car. So I left the back door open, locked the front door, closed the door, go to the door of the facility, open it up, and here comes this meatball, comes running out of my car, into, like, blows by me into this building, and they've got like a waiting room in there that's all contained. And he goes running in there, and one of the managers of the facility was standing out there. They're usually out there because they, like, when they saw us pull up on the cameras, they come out, they got a clipboard, and they're like, hey officer, like, tell me what you got. Well, when they saw this guy come running in, and I kind of strolled in behind him smiling, she looks at me, her eyes are like this big around. She looks at me, she looks at him, and she's like, So she runs into this like fishbowl area. She badgers herself in, slams the door behind her, and is like sitting looking at the glass, like staring at me. She's just like staring at me, and I was standing there smiling. I was like, hi guys, like, you're gonna come out and do your job, like, I brought you something, like, this guy needs help him. I'm apparently not qualified to do this, so take him off my hands. And they were terrified, they were petrified, they were just sitting there, they wouldn't move. And meanwhile, he's walking around the lobby, he's like, and he's like clawing at demons and all this other stuff. There's like a mail slot down low, and she opens up the mail slot and makes me bend down and talk to her through the mail slot. And I had to say, here's his name, here's his date of birth, this is what he told me. And because he wasn't in a state to talk to them. And I remember I'm like, hey buddy, is that true? And he's like, yeah. And she starts making phone calls because she wanted to make sure, well, what she was trying to do was find a reason not to accept him into her facility. But she was calling doctors, asking for permission to take him. And she was probably giving them some bullshit description of what was going on with him. But they finally agreed that they would take him as long as he agreed to be medicated before he came back on the floor. So they came out, he agreed to take the medications because he wanted to be there and he wanted the medications. So they came out, they gave him some medicine. I had to stand by for like 10-15 minutes until he became a little bit more calm for them. And then they took him back on the unit, and that was the end of it. I don't know if you guys were picking up on the whole point of that story, is that there's this narrative out there that police officers are not suited to do this kind of work, that we terrify people, that we don't have the proper training on how to do this kind of stuff, yada yada yada. And here I was, a police officer with zero additional training. I've not gone to CIT training, I've not gone to anything, I've not done anything. The only thing I've done is read some books, and learn how to, and like observe people and learn how to do my job, which is what the majority of us have done. So here I am, this knuckle dragging meathead with no education, and I'm bringing these people in completely without a problem. And the trained professionals have to make a bunch of phone calls to see if they're able to keep this person. And not only that, but they were afraid to even walk outside of their glass protected area just to talk to him. These are the situations that people who are making these kind of statements are not aware of. And if they are aware of, they're trying to hide them from the public because they don't want people to see what's going on. So I don't know if that answers your question, but this is something that I feel very strongly about. And I'll talk about it at some other time as well, because I have friends that are in that world. I love them to death. I have great respect for them and great respect for what they do. They also have great respect for what I do, and we know what the other is capable of. And for some reason, a lot of other people don't. And the people who don't know what's going on are the ones that are making the rules, and that's dangerous. I don't know if I've ever said that before. I feel like it's like a repeating theme of my videos, is that the people who are making the rules don't know what they're talking about. And when the people making the rules don't know what they're talking about, that's dangerous. I don't know. So those are going to be my thoughts for today. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys soon.